Hey everybody, it's Circle of Pope Pastors again, trying to answer questions that people have asked us. Today we're working on why does it seem like the church is so obsessed with sex? So we all had lots to say about that, and you probably do too. So add some comments when we're done. But we're going to give you about 9 minutes, starting with Joshua.
Well, I think the church might be trying to respond to a culture that's inundated with sex. It's sort of become ubiquitous, I think, with mainstream culture. So it's a sort of, in some ways, a little bit of a correct course correction because the church has dealt with, I think, the eternal things over the past couple decades. Well, say like into the 80s, right? But didn't have a lot of stuff to say about economics and day-to-day relations and stuff like that. So I think there, in some ways, it's cool that the people of following Jesus care more than about just like heaven and hell kind of stuff, and are kind of trying to be holistic. But at the same time, I think so much of the church just kind of comes across in these sort of puritanical ways, or ends up emulating the systems of the government or something in the way that they try to make policies as opposed to having transformative relationships.
You used the word puritanical, Joshua, and that's one of the things I was thinking about, where the church in general seems obsessed with sex because of some of our history. The Puritans themselves have that sort of history, or the Roman Church and its idea that priests ought to be celibate kind of brings that all to the table all the time for us, and I think we're responding to that history all the time.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it might seem like we're obsessed with sex when really sex is really basic to how human beings think all the time. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't be thinking about sex and talking about sex and wondering about it. And on Downton Abbey, I think the other day, there was some character who was celebrating how women were getting free from the restrictions that were placed around them sexually. And I was interested in just that sense that supposedly to be free from any sense of morality or any sense that sex is something you should be thinking about or how you connect is kind of irrelevant is a little bit dehumanizing. So I mean, maybe we should be obsessed with sex because it's so basic to being a human that how could it not be something that God was interested in or that we were interested in because we just want to be whole. So. Johnny, you got anything to say about this?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that it seems like the church is obsessed with sex is because we've decided that it's important for us to legislate it. And so now we're involved in rules and regulations, and the culture also attaches meaning to what is sexual and what isn't. And by and large, they've reduced it down to a narrow thing. So if I hold your hand, Rod, that's sexual. If I kiss Nate on the cheek, that's sexual. So everything is sexual that we're doing, and so we're restricted in our expression of it. And so the church gets a reputation for being kind of obsessed with anti-sex, with being not sex positive. And the culture informs us.
Wow, I hadn't thought about that yet. So I guess we probably do have a reputation already with the culture because there's a lot of kissing and hand-holding going on among us. I don't know all I should think about that. I was also thinking, though, that the connections that we're making sexually as people do reflect the kind of connections that we make with God. And I often think that the longing that we have to make those connections and even the ecstasy we feel about them has a lot to say about how we are innately spiritual beings. And our relationship with God is pretty sexual, too, in the sense that it has that same, it kind of comes from that same quadrant. And for me, it all kind of goes together in a nice way.
So, Rod, a simpler way to say that, I think what I'm hearing you say is we're obsessed with sex because we're obsessed with connecting to God, and they go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same spiritual territory, maybe, soulfully, in the deep parts of us, and we long for that.
Mm-hmm.
It actually gets confusing sometimes for people in our church who want rules to be clear so that they can abide or break them. And I think some of the rules we come up with are like what Nate said. You matter, and your sexuality matters to God and to the community. And it's sort of like, yeah, but what about this? And I oftentimes want to have a relationship with somebody that we're processing that with, maybe agree that we're going to follow Jesus, and this is kind of part of our own mutual discipleship, and what's healthy might not be so easy to state in a legislative sentence.
Yeah, we were talking about that at my cell today on another topic, but the idea was that some people really do need those rules. It might even be irritating to some people because they keep making rules rather than having the relationship. There's kind of a spectrum, I think, about who can actually do that. And so for a large swath of the population, the rules really do work for them. But ultimately, I would hope that they end up with the relationship when it comes to another person, of course, but when it comes to God, that they actually end up having that intimacy that's so satisfying rather than just trying to stay out of his, the way of his lightning bolt or something by following all the rules.
Wow, an intimacy that satisfies. That's such a beautiful hope for me. I guess, just confession, I don't know if I probably had moments of feeling satisfied intimately, but generally I'm kind of a little bit longing like all the time. So that's even more of an aspiration for me. And I've been, married for over a decade, so it's kind of that is a drag for some people to say like, hey, well, this should be worked out since I did the appropriate, rite of passage or followed the rules. But there's a lot more to it.
That sounds like a good song for you to write. So tune in next time, everybody, when Joshua will start out with the song, "The Intimacy That Satisfies, but Still Longing." I think that has a lot to do with our sexuality. So let's leave it there, even though we hardly kind of scratched the surface, but still took up our time. Sorry about that. Maybe we'll do it again. I hope that you'll enjoy our video. Maybe we always want you to share it around and comment. The comments are always great. You usually do that to us in person rather than online, but if you want to write it out, that'd be great. See you next time.